Spurs play the Magic in preseason game number 2. Let's take a look at how things may go down.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs and the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Yeah, there's a Spurs game today. Yay! After that first one, I don't know if many fans are going to want to tune in, but the Spurs will play the Magic tonight in preseason game number 2, preseason home opener number 1 for the Spurs in San Antonio. We're going to be previewing tonight's game more. We're also going to be looking at the NBA.com annual survey was released, and a couple Spurs made it, so there's something. We're going to be reacting to that. Maybe some names that were left off that should have been added to certain categories in the annual survey. And later on, we'll have a special guest. He is back, everybody. Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He will be talking about Primo's MCL injury. What does that mean moving forward? But up first is the only man I ever see throw hands with Juggernaut and survive. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Joe Garcia.
All eyes, Jeff. All eyes.
All eyes?
I said all eyes. I don't throw hands, man, with Juggernaut and survive. I don't think anybody does. You just try to stay out of the way. You just try to stay out of the way.
Yeah, exactly, man. But yeah, he is with Two Shots Podcast. He's going to be talking about his show later on and maybe giving us more juicy details on when he's going to make a grand debut, or I'm going to call it a reopening, a grand reopening.
Grand reopening, yes, because I finally finished the studio, so we're going to have some guests come in here, and we're going to kick off the season by having some guests here, and having a good discussion. Maybe, just maybe, Jeff Garcia will grace us with his presence.
I hope so, to get that invite. And by the way, everybody, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Stay tuned later, as we're going to be telling how you can win this week's Locked On Spurs fan giveaway. Joe, the Spurs got curb stomped in preseason game number 1 by Houston. If you missed it, and if you were searching for a link to watch it, and if you didn't get a link, well, trust me, you didn't miss much. Very little highlight noteworthy. They hadn't played well. The rookies did well, but all in all, they just got curb stomped. But they get a chance for redemption tonight, Joe, versus the Orlando Magic. And right away, you look at tonight's game, and you just want to see how this young squad rebounds. Yes, I get it's a preseason game. It doesn't count, but I want to see what they're made of. Joe, what do you think?
I think it's going to be more of the same. I mean, I'm just going to be honest, man. I'm going to lay it out there. I'm just going to be honest. Look, what we're really looking for is the growth of the younger players, and that's what you should be looking for. You shouldn't be looking so much for the wins. And I think that's going to just not be the consensus for the preseason, but also for the regular season. I mean, to be honest, do we really want them to win all that many games? Want them to win 15 to 20 so you can get a higher draft pick. And, hopefully that'll help move this team closer to the promised land. But, I mean, I'm just going to be looking for growth of the players. And, that's all you can do at this point. I mean, it's not going to be like a dramatic improvement from one game to the next, Jeff.
Right. And look, the Spurs, we know what the plan is. It's a rebuild. And as Joe highlighted, development and getting better game by game is key. And speaking of that, first of all, they're playing at home tonight, AT&T Center. I want to see how they react to the fans. If fans are going to go to the preseason game, to see that side of things. Also, too, is as far as on the court is concerned, I want to see a little something more out of Blake Wesley. Like, he shined bright at the Vegas Summer League, but in preseason game number 1, he was on and off. Didn't really have a good shooting game. So I want to see more development with him. But as far as the veterans are concerned, your Visells, your Pirtles, Doug McDermott, Josh Richardson, I really like to see them get into some sort of groove too. Joe, let's start off with Devin Visell. What did you see out of preseason game number 1? What do you like to see tonight out of him?
Well, he was very efficient with the minutes that he was given. 19 minutes. He scored 13 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. I mean, he was looking like he was ready to play. I think he was more game ready than some of the other players. The other notable mentions as well were going to be Isaiah Roby, which really
Right.
impressed Coach Pop,
Yes.
and Malachi Branham. I mean, this kid has impressed in the summer league, and now he's impressing not just Spurs fans, but I'm sure the coaching staff, because 14 minutes, 10 points. I mean, the kid is not afraid. He has a lot of courage and a lot of energy out there on the court.
Mhm.
So again, it's a you like what you're seeing out of these particular players early on,
Right.
especially Devin Visell.
I definitely, as far as collectively, I want to see this team shoot the three ball a little better. They were just atrocious in preseason game number 1. And also, of all things, too, Joe, free throws. Free throws. They couldn't. Oh, I mean, to be fair, I think both sides couldn't make them, but you don't care about the Rockets. You care about your Spurs. You want to see that get better. So if you just look at just that one stat from preseason game 1, free throws, it tells you that this team is kind of starting from scratch, working on free throws, working on 3-shot, working on chemistry, working on infusing these young guys into the system. Now, look, the good thing is about it, they were in good spirits after the loss. Vassell joked like how they didn't play that well. Terry Jones started laughing. Like, yeah, we didn't play well. So Hans started laughing. But okay, fine. It's a preseason game number 1, kids. You got to get that under your belt. But you're gonna have to take these games a little bit more serious. You got to show, at minimum, Joe, some competitive spirit. Your thoughts?
I mean, I believe at this point that they're just trying the best they can, Jeff. And it's a learning experience from game to game. I mean, all you can expect for them to do is try to get better. And honestly, they were competitive for about maybe 10 minutes there, and then that's
Yeah,
basically
and you're
when the
being
wheels
generous.
fell off.
Yeah, you're
you
being
know,
very generous.
yeah,
But
I'm
as
just
far as
saying, they
yeah,
tried. Give them an A for effort, Jeff.
they definitely tried for a little bit until the wheels came off. But as far as the other side is concerned, Magic, they also come in 0-1 at the AT&T Center. All eyes obviously going to be on Paolo Banchero, the number 1 pick overall. In his preseason debut, he scored 8 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, had a block. Other names to watch out for: Mo Bamba. In his preseason game number 1, 7 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. Jalen Suggs, 4 points, 2 assists, 1 rebound, 2 steals in preseason game number 1. All in all, this is a Magic team that's also looking to get their way out of mediocrity, get themselves back on top. They're going through a rebuild as well, and it starts with Paolo Banchero. So, of course, fans going to the game are going to love to see that. Greg Jones talked about that, Joe. He said
Yeah, I
he's
mean,
looking forward to going against a fellow Dookie. So, there are some little sub stories to watch tonight at the game at the AT&T Center. Overall, Joe, it is a preseason game. You just want to see incremental growth. Win or loss, where do you stand with this team? Should they win or they lose tonight?
uh, I think at this point they should just go ahead and put forth their best effort. I mean, Coach Pop and the coaching staff, just run the young guns out there to death, man. Let them see what they can do out there. Get them that much needed experience, and of course, the playing time. And, if they win or lose, that shouldn't really matter. What should matter is how well they're playing, as a collective unit. Have we seen growth from one game to the next? And there are some other storylines going on here as well, because there's going to be some positions that, are free. As Coach Pop said,
Yep.
a
Yep.
lot of the starting positions are free. So the young Bucks got to go and impress to get those starting spots.
Yep. Again, keeping an eye out for that point guard spot. Trey Jones, is he going to cement himself as that starter with Primo out for the entire preseason? We shall see. All signs are, and to me, Joe, I think that's where it's going to lead to, because he will probably be your regular season opening night starter at the PG spot with Primo out. I don't think Pop's going to throw him unless he's going to throw him to the fire, as he said he's going to throw all these kids into the fire, but I just can't see that. So, yeah, should be a fun game to check out. Spurs Magic tonight at the AT&T Center. When we get back, we're going to look at the NBA.com annual general manager survey. How did the Spurs do, if any, fared in the results? But before we do that, I want to talk to you about Bet Online, your number 1 source for all your football betting information this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchup news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. Look, as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information. Live betting, up-to-date scores for every sport out there. Look, it's the easiest, the fastest way to check into all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Maybe they might have the lines on if Joe can handle 2 rounds with Juggernaut there. Probably not.
Probably
I don't
not.
think so, Joe. Yeah, I don't think. I think you'd probably be a heavy underdog.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Jeff, I think you would probably be hiding somewhere, because you don't want no
Yeah,
part of the juggernaut.
no. We're making that up, everybody. But you can go to betonline.net to check out the latest MIP, Most Improved Player of the Year awards in the NBA 2022-2023. Why? Because Visell and Keldon Johnson are on that list. Go right now to go check out what their futures are looking like right now. So you got yourself a mobile device to learn more and get all the action over there. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back with Joe Garcia of Two Shots Podcast. We're talking the Silver and Black. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Two Shots Podcast. Do it right now because he has a lot of things cooking upcoming, and he's going to talk about that in just a minute. But hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Make sure to check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview starting October 10th. It's a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. Local team experts and the insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey, all combining like Devastator and from the Transformers into one ultimate NBA preview. Starting October 10th, search for the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022 on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. So, Joe, you remember those days when the NBA.com would release its annual GM survey where they asked all participating team and GMs about teams, best players, best coaches, rookie, which team's going to be the last team standing, and the Spurs used to dominate. Remember those days?
I think we all remember those days, but those days are long forgotten now. I think we only have Coach Pop as the sole holdover from those days.
Well, not even then, because he would dominate all the coaching categories, like no matter what, number one, tied for one. Yeah, those days are long gone. In case you missed it, the NBA.com released the annual GM survey. And although it was very noticeable, the Spurs were not in many, I would say what, Joe, like 99.9% of the survey responses.
Yeah, they weren't even, not even any of the
Yeah.
players. Most of the players were not even mentioned in it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that too in a bit.
Yeah.
But a couple Spurs made it. First of all, Joe, what's up with Malachi Branham? How did he do?
Well, Malachi Branham, they said that he was one of the best steals in the draft, so kudos to the Spurs for making the list, Jeff. I guess, that's something, right?
Well, he got some votes. He didn't place, though.
Yeah.
So, but nevertheless, what do you think about that? Do you think Branham is going to be a steal?
I think Branham is going to be a steal. I think he's already shown, he can play ball. I mean, you love what you see out of the kid. You love his enthusiasm and his energy out there from, going back to the summer league to preseason. I think he's well ahead of the curve, and I expect him to get a lot of playing time this season. I think the Spurs are actually going to forego the usual of, let's go ahead and put these kids over at the Austin G League, the Austin Spurs in the G League, should I say.
Right.
I think they're going to get a lot of playing time, especially Malachi Branham. I think he's impressed everybody.
Yeah, I think of all the rookies, I think he is going to shine brighter than what many probably think. I know all eyes are on Sohan and Blake Wesley, but I think as the season grows on, Malachi's really going to emerge as, you know what, the Spurs did get a steal at number 20. Look at him. He's instant offense. We saw that in Vegas, and we saw that in the preseason game 1 versus Houston, 10 points like that off the bench. So not surprised he got some votes as one of the bigger steals at where he was picked, number 20 overall for the Spurs. Joe, how did Popovich do?
He got a mention for one of the top coaches in the NBA. So I like that. I mean, of course he's going to be mentioned in that, Jeff. But unfortunately for Spurs fans, it wasn't mentioned in a lot of other categories.
Yeah, Popovich got who was actually tied for third for actually 2 categories. One for best motivator manager So check there. And then, as you mentioned, best coaches tied for third. I think it was behind Spoelstra and Monty Williams.
Oh,
So
he was tied, I think, with Monty. Him and Monty were
it was
tied.
tied. It was tied. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, our point is like, hey, he placed. So some GMs out there still think that he is a viable head coach, and you can't argue with that. One of the greatest ever. But you remember the days where he would dominate the coaching categories?
I do.
Is this a sign of the times, Joe, that times are changing?
Yeah, times are changing, and with Steve Kerr now, who's dominating that list now. I think he came out on the list several times. One of those was going to be running the best offense. Which coach runs the best offense in the NBA, and Steve Kerr was on the tops of that list. And I think it was another one or two categories that he was dominating as well. So the times have changed.
Yeah. Now there's a couple of categories. Well, actually, I think one big category. Well, actually, no, two. I'm sorry. I look at my notes here. There are two of them where I felt that maybe some Spurs players should have been mentioned or at least picked up votes. So the first one is a breakout player, and no Spurs were listed there. And I thought that it's funny because I'm thinking Keldon should have been a viable pick, or maybe Devin Visell. That was very interesting, and then neither no GM picked Keldon or Visell. Again, let's having a breakout season. Why do I think it'll be Keldon or Devin Visell to have themselves a season this upcoming regular season, Joe?
I'm going to be honest with you. The person that I'm really eyeing that's going to make a splash and have a breakout season is none other than Devin Visell. I believe that Keldon Johnson is going to have a great season, but I think from what I saw in the prior season to now what's going to transpire this upcoming season, the biggest growth should come, in my eyes, from one Devin Visell. So I, in particular, are going to be watching him very closely.
In another category where I thought at minimum Sohan would make it was the category of the best rookie in 5 years. Sohan was not even mentioned at all. And he's the number 9 pick. Did you think he got slided?
Well, what team is he playing for? He's playing for the San Antonio Spurs.
Joe, you went there, Joe.
Dude,
Come on.
I'm keeping it real, man. Look at what the latest comments from one former Spur, DeMar DeRozan, says. He felt like he was invisible. You're not going to get a lot of love when you're playing with the San Antonio Spurs. You're going to have to force the league to, kind of look at you. And if Sohan is as much hyped as he has been, by the Spurs fans, I mean, he's going to have to go ahead and prove that out there on the court. He's already looked pretty good in preseason play, got off to a rough start, second half, played a lot better. I think he's going to be one of the better defenders, But again, if you're going to want all eyes on you, you got to show us something.
All in all, Joe, if you're a fan and you clicked on that link at NBA.com to check out the survey, you shouldn't be surprised the Spurs were not heavily mentioned, right?
You shouldn't be surprised. They're not even heavily mentioned in national games, Jeff. Nobody wants to air those games, unless you're in the local area, unless you're an avid Spurs fan.
Right.
You're going to want to see those games. But let's be honest, when you're talking about national games and getting all that love like the Spurs used to back in the day, that ain't happening now.
Yeah. And again, I'm circling back to the Branham category where he picked up some votes as far as, one of the best deals taken where he was picked at. I'm surprised Wesley didn't make it in there too, because a lot of people felt that maybe he should have gone a little higher, but he didn't. And then I think Wesley, he says that that's really been bothering him since draft night. So no votes for Wesley. Yeah, but it could simply just be that, Joe. You combine the fact that historically, I mean, for a good chunk, maybe not during the dynasty years, but overall, maybe even their dynasty years, they didn't get a lot of attention. I think that was been a big gripe among Spurs fans.
Well, I think they did. They did get a lot of attention, but you remember in the arenas, especially when they would play against the Lakers, what song would they play to the Spurs being introduced? They would always play dun dun dun. They were, the villains,
Oh, the villains, right? Yeah, the Empire, the Imperial March. Yes.
They would always play that song when the Spurs were coming to town. They were looked upon as the villains. They were the guys that were enforcing their will on the court, much, as the infamous hip check by Robert Horry on one Steve Nash, went down in infamy. I mean, that's how the Spurs were portrayed back then. Not so much nowadays.
Nope, and that's right. Not so much nowadays, but many fans feel that the Spurs have been slighted even during their dynasty days. And you add the fact what DeMar DeRozan had to say recently. Yeah, maybe you could see why a lot of NBA GMs didn't pick many Spurs players or just the team itself in categories. Now, look, there's some that are obvious. Who's going to be the last team standing? Yeah, sure. The Spurs are not going to be the last team. Who's going to win the West? Sure, the Spurs are not going to do that. But yeah. Woo, it's going to be a long season, Joe, isn't it?
Yeah, you better have your little something when you're watching the games. You got to put something in your drink, because it's going to be one of those seasons. And honestly, I mean, do you really want the team to go ahead and win 30 games, 35 games, and it not be enough for the play-in? At some point in time, the Spurs fans have to come to the realization of being in mediocrity and limbo. It's not where you want to be. They're in a full-on rebuild. They know what's about to happen, so prepare yourself.
Well, Joe, we thank you for coming on to Locked On Spurs. We're going to bring in our next guest. But before we do that, tell us what you got cooking, man. I know you've been teasing me. You've been texting me photos. Everybody, Joe texts me like at all hours of the night or the day. He'll be like, check this out. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. But, Joe, what can you tell us right now? What you got cooking over there at Two Shots?
Well, from Two Shots on the back end is what I've been focusing a lot of my efforts on, and that's making money, setting up deals and talking with, other companies. So we have a lot of things that we're going to be unveiling here soon. So we're going to have some partners that we're going to have, I guess, and as part of the show, because we're going to run some ads. And I'm also talking with some other companies behind the scenes to get a team of writers to help write some articles for Two Shots. So it's going to be an interesting season, to say the least. A lot of growth, a lot of new things coming, but in a good way, Right.
Well, if you want to check out Joe and what he's got cooking, make sure to follow him on Twitter at Two Shots Podcast. And this Friday, we continue our fan giveaway during the offseason. Still technically the offseason, right, Joe? It's still technically the offseason.
Technically.
Right? Technically, right? Preseason. Preseason, offseason. But our point is that Locked On Spurs has been giving away a lot of fan prizes from. The point is a lot of fans have been winning. And you can win again this Friday on Locked On Spurs. So we have our mutual friend, Joe, Rudy Campos, and Sweep the League. They donated a T-shirt for one lucky fan. It's already out there on social media. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Jeff G Spurs Zone. You can see a picture of it. So this Friday, find out how to win that T-shirt from Sweep the League, Rudy Campos and his crew out there. And good luck. Maybe, and I'm making this up. Maybe the trivia will be, how many times has Joe beaten the you-know-what out of Juggernaut? That should be the trivia.
No, you know what I'm waiting for? I mean, that's a great, gift to give, to donate and all that. So make sure you go ahead and watch Sweep the League. Make sure you follow him on social media. Our good friend Rudy Campos and his crew are doing great things out there. So make sure you definitely follow them. But I want to know when the next giveaway is going to happen, and are we going to finally see, as set up for the prize, a signed Jeff Garcia bobblehead, maybe?
You know what? Don't they make like personalized Funko Pops? Like I always wanted one of those. I think
that's the thing. That's the thing that I'm working on, to have fun, just as a side hobby. But when you come into San Antonio next time, I want to get you a 3D scan and then use the 3D printer so we can make a bobblehead out of you.
Oh my God, that would be hilarious. But by the way, I know this week's fan prize giveaways have been, taken already by Sweep the League and Rudy. We already have next week's lined up, and it's a good one. Yeah, we already have next week's lined up. It's a real fun one too. And that the person who's actually donating the prize is actually going to come on Locked On Spurs that day when we announce it. So it should be a good one. But once again, thank you, Joe, for hopping on this episode of Locked On Spurs. Make sure to follow him again on Twitter at Two Shots Podcast. Up next, we have Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Yes, he's back, everybody. He's going to be explaining what exactly happened to Josh Primo, that MCL sprain. He did a bang-up job talking about Keldon Johnson's shoulder injury. Well, like I said, he's back. What can fans expect? What can you learn about what happened to Primo and his thoughts overall on keeping the players healthy this upcoming season? So we're going to be talking about with him in just a few seconds. All right, now let's go ahead and welcome our special guest, weekly contributor here at Locked On Spurs. He is Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He's an ER doc at St. David's Medical Center and the Austin Emergency Center. He also is with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine. You want to follow him on Twitter at Austin ER Doc. Do it right now. He was just helping me out, go over a little bit of a Q&A with my cold that I've been dealing with, and everybody knows that on Locked On Spurs. I've been telling everybody, doctor, that I've been dealing with this the last 2 episodes. So I appreciate your time, but welcome back. By the way, Ryan, you had some incredible feedback. The fan base loved what your thoughts had to say about the KJ injury, and even the network applauded you. So good job.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Hope we get you feeling better. That's what I'm here for. Help.
Oh yeah.
Better.
Well,
whole point of being a doc.
Yeah. Well, for Spurs fans, they're hoping that Josh Primo will feel better, and all signs are pointing that he will. And that's why Mr. Ryan McCorkle is here today. He's going to discuss what exactly is an left MCL sprain that Josh Primo suffered. Now, let's go to read the injury update from the Spurs. San Antonio Spurs guard Josh Primo has suffered a left MCL sprain. While he'll miss the start of the Spurs preseason schedule, Primo is expected to be available for the start of the regular season. And Ryan, some of my sources have told me that Primo suffered the injury not in formal training camp when it started. It actually happened during open gym, where the players are just allowed to just go at it, and that's how he suffered it. So they must have been going pretty hard for that to happen. So, Doctor, you were here. Tell us what you think about this injury. What should fans be educated about this MCL sprain that Primo suffered?
Well, I guess we start off with the basics. MCL's the medial collateral ligament. This is a really common injury both in soccer and basketball, where someone gets hit on the outside of the knee and it sprains that ligament that's on the inside. Medial meaning inside. Josh was super lucky because a lot of times that's accompanied with an ACL tear or an MCL tear. The sprain will just take, a few days to a few weeks to heal. If it's an actual tear, a grade 1 tear, probably take 2 to 8 weeks to heal. A grade 2 or 3 tear, most likely for a Spurs player, would require surgery. And then You're talking, 12 weeks to heal. So luckily this was just a mild sprain, usually somewhere between a few days and, 2 weeks before you're back to full strength. I believe he's already back in the full drills that are non-contact. But yeah, super common injury when someone falls into the outside of your knee, both soccer and basketball, and it could have been much, much worse. So Josh Primo is a lucky guy, and he'll be back on the court soon.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Popovich did say that Primo is back on the court doing non-contact, but definitely, going through the rigors of an NBA training camp and all. So when a player is not being put into full contact, training sessions, exercises, what type of non-contact drills we can expect athletes like Primo to go through?
Well, you got an MCL sprain, just kind of, this is going to be a very common theme with musculoskeletal injuries when we talk about Spurs injuries. It's the classic ricin therapy: rest, ice, compression, elevation, and nonsteroidal anti-inflammatories. So that's the treatment. And then the physical therapy, just keeping the range of motion in the knee, keeping the swelling down, strengthening those hamstrings, the quadriceps, the abductors and adductors around the knee to protect that MCL from any further injury and get him ready to go back to full contact. So he's going through all the regular training, probably doing all the regular motions he normally does, just avoiding anybody else accidentally falling into that knee while it's already that MCL, the medial collateral ligament, is still healing and getting better.
Healing. Yeah. once he does come back to the court for full contact, would you suspect that even that would be limited? Perhaps they would not let him go full throttle. Like said, okay, instead of playing 5-on-5 full court, here's 3-on-3 half court. Is this kind of like a gradual progression to full contact? Or do you factor in how young he is? He's 19 years old. Usually kids that age, they bounce back pretty fast.
Yeah, and again, like we talk about with a lot of other injuries, I think the biggest thing is for it not to be in their head, that they're not favoring it, that they're not, paying attention to trying to protect it, that nobody else falls into it, because those are the situations that get you in trouble. When you start favoring an injury or you start trying to make sure an injury doesn't get exposed to any contact is when you end up hurting yourself worse. So like everything else, it's a gradual progression back to full 5-on-5. So I'm sure they're going through gradual steps, getting him back up to that level. But the biggest thing is when you do get him back out there 5-on-5, and it should be pretty quickly, that when it happens, it's not in his mind. He's moving like he never had an injury in the first place, so that he doesn't injure himself further.
We are talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Make sure to follow on Twitter at AustinERDoc. And he is back here on Locked On Spurs giving us an injury update for the week. And if you missed his Keldon Johnson shoulder dislocation report, go back a few episodes of Locked On Spurs. It is all there for you. And a lot of people really enjoyed Dr. Ryan's breakdown of that injury. And we're talking about Josh Primo's MCL sprain on this segment with Dr. Ryan McCorkle. Doctor, the season is right around the corner. They're going through preseason right now. Technically, the new season hasn't started. But a lot of these guys, are coming back into camp. They try to maintain their shape, being winded, avoiding, having to start from scratch. But even in training camp as a doctor, what are things that usually medical staffs try to get physically right with these players ahead of the start of the regular season?
Well, I think everybody realizes that being a professional athlete is now a year-round job. So it's not like, back in the day when people used to just let it go during the off season and come back in terrible shape. And because otherwise that's usually the first thing, is to get the cardiovascular fitness back up to a level ready for the season. Because when people get too tired, that's when injuries can occur. So they need to get that wind back, get that cardiovascular fitness back. So that's usually the first thing. And then also big thing is stretching, getting the muscles ready to undergo this kind of load that they may not, or they haven't been going through in the off season. Most likely kept in cardiovascular shape, but not the kind of demands that training camp and the season are going to put on them. But again, just like with the NFL, there's some load balancing in there, and you want to limit their exposure to contact before we get into real games, kind of slowly ramping it up and getting them ready.
Would that be double for rookies who don't go through an 82-game slate? In college it's about 25, 30 games, maybe a little bit more with the tournament, but never to this point. And a lot of you hear it before, the rookie wall. They slam into that rookie wall. I guess would that suggestion you just said right now be double for rookies?
Yeah, the demands of an NBA season are nothing like you've ever seen in any of their AAU, high school, college levels. An 82-game season against, the kind of athletes that you're going to compete against in the NBA with that level of strength, speed, mass is not something any of these rookies have ever been exposed to before. So it puts a lot of demands on their body. They got to get in a different cardiovascular shape, which is, that's where it's good to be young. These guys are young, 18, 19, 20. So that's something they can definitely do. But I think a lot of the staff also spends a lot of time starting to try to talk to these guys about nutrition, because as 18, 19, 20-year-olds, that's not something that they've ever done. They eat whatever they want, whenever they want, because, they've been incredible athletes and burned through those calories. So taking care of your body, taking care of your nutrition, that's something that's hard to communicate to super young guys, to rookies. But when they learn that, it's a whole different level of their career. A lot of times we say that's, usually doesn't happen until somebody's 24, 25, 26, and they start to see their body break down through the season.
Right.
And know they got to do something different. So hopefully they can get through to them early on with the rookies, because the earlier they buy into that, the better it's going to be for them and for their career and for the Spurs.
Right. And circling back to Josh Primo, he should be okay, right? Spurs, you can calm down Spurs fans that are biting their fingernails right now and worried about the young promising guy. He should be okay by regular season.
Yeah, a grade 1 MCL sprain. He's fine in a few days to 2 weeks max. He's going to be just fine for the regular season. Like I said, the big thing I guess to take away from this is the mechanism. Is when somebody falls on the outside of that knee, that can be devastating. That is the mechanism for MCL tear and ACL tear. ACL tear, gone for a year. MCL tear, you're gone for 3 months, 4 months. So he was very lucky that this wasn't worse, but it was extremely mild. Grade 1 MCL sprain. Back in a couple of weeks, be good to go by the beginning of the season.
He is Dr. Ryan McCorkle, back here on Locked On Spurs to do his weekly segment, giving you a Spurs medical injury update whenever we need it. And again, he is with the St. David's Medical Center and Austin Emergency Center. He's also with the Backstage Medical Concierge and Medicine Practice. You want to talk to a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I do backstage medical for artists and crew for most of the local venues here. The Moody Center, the Moody Theater, ACL Lives, Stubbs, all those kind of things. Been doing it for 10 years. Love working with the musicians here because it's the live music capital of the world, Austin, Texas. I'm also doing the ACL Festival for the 9th year this year, doing the Artist Village and helping the artists and crew out there. So that's always a fun 2 weekends, and that will start up this Friday. And yeah, I appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter or Instagram, Austin ER Doc on Twitter and Austin EM Doc on Instagram. So I appreciate it.
And I'm going to do him a favor, going to repeat that Twitter handle one more time. It's at Austin ER Doc. Do it right now. Dr. Ryan McCorkle, we thank you once again for hopping on this episode of Locked On Spurs for your weekly stop. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me, man.
And thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe to Locked On Spurs on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, the YouTube page, and much, much more. And while you're at it, why don't you check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball. It is a great, great listen, and make that your second listen from the Locked On NBA Network. So for Joe Garcia, Dr. Ryan McCorkle, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.